So, without any further ado, I wish to introduce the amazing Moshe Cohen to you. Moshe is known for, he has many hats that he wears, literally, and he is known for many achievements in the field of creative arts and clowning. He is a performing artist, sacred mischief maker, internationally renowned teacher. He's one of the early co-founders of Clowns Without Borders in the USA. He's a founder of the Zen Order of Disorder. He's performed his amazing Mr. Yoo-Hoo show in theaters and festivals in over 50 countries around the world. In fact, Moshe began teaching clown in 1993 in San Francisco at the San Francisco Circus Center. And in 2001, Moshe started teaching Clowning Your Zen workshops with Roshi Bernie Glassman, shifting the focus from performing, and this is the crucial bit that we're going to talk about, to levity and lightfulness, which is a kind of concept that was coined by Moshe, creating mindful, collaborative communication and personal well-being. His pedagogy continues to evolve today, focusing on the principle that channeling humor and lightness asks an individual to source their worlds of joy, empathy, and compassion, thus strengthening and expanding human relationships and interactions. So pretty incredible work. We're really excited. And hopefully if the technology works, Moshe is going to appear right about now.
Oh, it worked. Hi, everybody.
There's an amazing magic duck there. It made you appear.
Yeah, I know. Well, it kind of infiltrates sometimes on the Zoom screen or whatever screen that is. Yes.
It invades when you can't think of the answer to a question. It appears magically.
Right.
That's how it works.
And I see that I'm out of focus. Wait, let me see if I can resolve that. There
You're in focus to me.
Oh, good.
Maybe it's something in the duck.
The duck, the magic focusing duck. There you go.
I also have a cow.
Oh, yeah, that's the focuser.
And the cow does tricks.
Cow bows.
Yeah.
Wow to the cow.
Well, I've been doing a fair amount of medical clowning online, right? Because we're going back in live a bit now, but for the past year, a lot of it's been on, through Zoom or WebEx or whatever. And so, how do you reach people? And I'm sitting next to my screen here are a few elements of what I do when I'm online with that for focus.
Right.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So you have your little grab bag of toys that you would normally take around the hospital with you, and you can just kind of have them there, ready to go in front of by the camera. Yeah. Well, we really want to talk in a minute, a little bit later, about the implications of COVID and long distance, clowning, and see where that's taken you. But what we thought, Moshe, we'd start with, if that's okay, is we'd really like to know, because we've been looking at all these different concepts that you've created around lightfulness, levity, lightness, and this very specific way that you've brought together Zen and clowning. What we thought was, could you start by just giving us a little kind of primer, like a little explanation of what you mean specifically by lightfulness and its relationship to clown, and what's meant by, and there was this amazing quote on your website. You talked about neuroscience showing that lightness positively influences connections subconsciously. And of course, that kind of, for us, because we're involved, well, Molly's, brings the Feldenkrais, which is all to do with the nervous system. So we're really fascinated by that connection with how comedy and lightness might activate the nervous system and create these connections. So there's a lot there I'm throwing at you, but
what is lightfulness?
Yeah,
that's good question. I'm still figuring it out. Well, it started because I started teaching with Bernie, and it was clear that quick screen change there.
Musical screens.
Let me get myself looking better.
Well, people don't want to be
I've got
looking
some
at
here.
our
I should
faces.
try that too.
Yeah. Well, if you could just
I can
pass
do
them
it.
on this way, I'd appreciate it. Now, lightfulness is, I coined this term because I was looking to explain where I was going outside, beyond the clown world. And actually, this is going to be a circular conversation because I'm not sure, I'm not prepared like, 1, 2, 3. But like when I started teaching with Bernie, no, we weren't, when I taught Bernie, he was the first person who wasn't a clown who came to study, Bernie Glassman. So Bernie Glassman is a well-known Zen master who founded the Zen Peacemaker Order and is well known for his socially engaged Buddhism. And without going into a lot of detail there, Bernie and I were teaching together, and we weren't teaching clowns. And when I taught Bernie, he was the first person who wasn't a clown. And I started to recognize that his goals were not to be on stage performing. And so I had to start looking at that and asking myself questions of, how do I approach this? What do I offer? And how is this going to be beneficial for what he's looking for? In other words, how can this work benefit somebody who's not looking to go on stage?
Right.
Because he was looking for tools of tricksterdom, as he put it, because people in his environment, like he's a high-level Zen master, which means that he's got a lot of students under him who have become teachers, and students under them who are studying or becoming teachers. And so I was looking at that and realizing that actually the work I did with Richard Pachinko, who was my clown teacher and was the teacher of Sue Morrison, who Barnaby studied with, his work, although it was definitely clown work, it asked that you source your sense of humor inside you. It didn't ask that you sense that you become clown and you work on this exterior clown image that you bring on stage, but it says, what's this energy in you that creates laughter? What's this energy in you that's funny that you want to share? At least that was my understanding. And that's where I came from, was, okay, so everybody has a sense of humor, at least most everybody, perhaps not everybody. And how do we express this humor? And most of us, when we're asked that question, we'll look for a joke. That's like, okay, I need to tell a joke. But that's really not where the funny is coming in. I'm all nervous and I'm sweating. Excuse me, I have to take care of that. I don't know why I'm all nervous, but I am.
You're talking.
I'm talking, yes. And I'm watching this little sweat thing grow here. Anyway, so what is that funny, and how do we express that without words?
Yeah.
Because the words actually get in the way of the funny, because humor, it's a sense, it's a sensation.
Yeah.
Which means that it's coming out of your creative, intuitive sphere. It's not coming out of your rational, logical mind.
Right.
And what I realized quickly was, okay, so actually the connection, not the only connection for sure with Zen or any form of mindfulness, is that you're trying to let go of the thinking mind. The way I put it is that, okay, who's driving your car? Is it your rational, logical mind, or can you give the driving wheel over to your intuitive side? And not too many of us are trained that way. We don't learn that way.
Right.
So that was a starting point. And that's, I think, where the term lightfulness came from, was because I wanted to emphasize the fullness, the not thinking part of that.
Yeah.
The other side of that coin that Barnaby brought up is lightness. What is lightness? Or what is humor, actually? If you think about humor in terms of an offering of generosity in a way. If you're looking to make people laugh, why are you doing that? I mean, my assumption is that people want others to laugh so that they feel better, so that they enjoy life more. And so there's this wish to better or to uplift the situation at hand. This is not universal, of course. We do have what people might call negative humor. But in general, if you look at when you're looking to make somebody laugh, it's because you're trying to bring up the mood. You're trying to elevate.
Yeah.
And so
Lighten the mood.
yeah, so you're lightening, actually. And if you look at humor in its most subtle form, not the big brash humor, but something that's very subtle, it is a sense of lightness there. And lightness comes to us through any, I would have to connect it directly to love or joy. Or if there's any difference between the two, I don't know exactly. That's a whole different conversation. But when we're feeling good about life, we feel lighter. Not necessarily physically, but just mentally, morally, spiritually. We're going, oh, life is good. Oh, I feel like having fun, enjoying myself. And if somebody who's working with humor in the clown world goes to their more subtle place, as small as it gets, it really is also that lightness that comes through.
I love this idea of subtle humor, not the big brash, as you mentioned. You know, it doesn't have to be something that makes people laugh out loud. It can be something that just connects to another person's subtle internal sense of humor.
Right, their inner joy, their yeah. And I think the other thing was that with Bernie and then with other people who came to study with me, their interest is not to be on stage. So their interest is in interacting with a much smaller audience.
Right.
One or two people in a much more intimate space where you're having a conversation and you go, and you just do some type of expression to say, well, I don't really know, but let's, enjoy trying to figure it out kind of thing. You're suggesting this possibility or the possibilities that you don't have to take things too seriously, which was also Bernie's main point was people take themselves too seriously, and I need to change that. My students, my teachers, they take themselves too seriously, or they're actually arrogant about their knowledge and their level of masterdom. And I need to break that apart. And I don't want to hit them over the head with a hammer, because you can use cutting humor, which is hurtful and not necessarily the best way to go about trying to make people aware of things that are going wrong. Can you do that through humor instead?
So many questions that I have. One of the things you mentioned that I'm really interested in is this idea that humor, I think you said, was it humor is a sensation or laughter?
Yeah.
And I love that idea. And because, so if lightness is also a sensation, and getting out of the thinking mind, is the thinking mind, what is the energy of that as a sensation? Is that a heaviness, right?
I don't know if it's a sensation at all.
Well, yeah, that's
what
interesting.
does your thinking mind awaken in your intuitive side when you're serious? It doesn't mean necessarily that you're heavy. But yeah, it tends to go in that direction, right? And that also has to do with the environment we live in and all the problems that we face in the everyday world. When you start thinking, or if you look at the headlines or whatever it is, then you go, oh, Jesus, whatever you say. Yeah.
So you also mentioned earlier that there was something about who's driving the car and this sort of letting the intuition take over from the I can't remember what the word was you used, but the
The thinking brain, the rational mind, the logical mind. I don't know if there's
So what's the connection there between the intuitive and letting that lead and the idea of this internal sensation of humor? Are they the same thing, or is the humor one branch of that intuitive sort of part?
Well, I don't know if you can actually define it, really. Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, I mean, it's not like it's either or, right? It's not either or. Everything's always present. But what are you aware of? What are you listening to internally? Most of us are internally listening to our logic. You know, there's been a wonderful flurry of Einstein quotes I don't know if they're all real, appearing on the internet recently. And they're just marvelous because basically that's what Einstein is saying, you know, I can't figure things out by thinking of them. I have to trust my intuition. And here's a genius, right, saying these things. And that got me to thinking. And he's also somebody who fully acknowledges both science and the spiritual elements of life. So, so I think it's this idea of awareness, right? Mindfulness, taking time or somehow allowing yourself to become aware of your sensations and giving some value to those. You know, often when we become aware that we're frustrated, for example, that's half the problem solving. So you're not happy, you know, things aren't going right, and you're like, you know, and so you go, oh, gee, I'm frustrated. And the moment you say to yourself, I'm frustrated, you give yourself permission to deal with it because it's no longer driving you.
Right.
And
totally.
It's like,
And then if you say, okay, I'm frustrated, can I invite lightness or humor into that frustration? And as a clown, I'm sure you know, Barnaby, that playing with frustration on stage elicits a lot of laughter in the audience, or playing with fear or anger. And why is that? Those are all because laughter it's a cathartic release of tension that we hold, of stress that we hold. And so the moment you go into a place where people have a lot of stress or a lot of tension, and you create humor around that, well, they're going to explode with laughter because you're giving them permission to release that.
Yeah, I'm curious about that in like everyday life. I think I see clowning, the practice of clowning and the sort of practice both in performance as a practitioner or a clown, but also just the practice of it, in learning about the art of it and talking about it and bringing the pieces of it into your own life, your daily life. I think it's ironic that the idea of walking onto stage as a clown can be really stressful, right? Be in this place of like total head thinking space. And most people would never, ever even in their wildest dreams imagine that they could do that, because they go so directly into the thinking space and like, how can I could never overcome that, because, they've not experienced what's on the other side, the sensations, really. The sensations of being present, the sensations of the connection, of when you're in that kind of liminal space where ideas appear. You're connected to that, in that flow, I guess you could call it. But I'm curious about how you get into that space, how you cross over. So both, in terms of, in performance, I think in my background as a performer, I would think that a lot of that is just connecting in with your body and connecting in with those sensations and practicing that, and practicing like, oh, what do I see with my eyes, which is a sensation, bringing it to other areas of focus. And that's interesting, because what they've found in a lot of well, all of the latest research in pain, chronic pain, and resolving that has to do with where is your mind going and how can you tap into other sensations in that present moment, in your body, around you, in the relationship of your body to the space around you, to people around you. So again, it's kind of a very similar action. But one of the things that I'm really curious about in terms of your own practice, when you're alone, right, or when you're in your own world and you're dealing with real life as you perceive it, and you've got things like, to do a meeting on Zoom when you have other things that piling up that you have to tend to, or whatever, and there's this kind of heaviness that comes into your body, into your life. I mean, when you're on stage, it's almost easier to do that because like the pressure's high. Like, okay, make this work now, tune in. But do you bring that into your normal everyday life? Does it serve you there? And how do you do that for yourself? Like, how do you bring lightness into when you're not on stage?
I just took a breath, and as I took a breath, I kind of invited lightness into my eyes, and I just looked. And what am I doing when I do that? Well, okay, I'm looking to connect with the neural pathways inside of me that the breath and lightness, or whatever you want to call that. I think what I'm trying to say is that you build the neural pathways that are not that present. You fortify them. You make that road a lot easier to travel, more available. And actually, if you work with that, if you play with that, and as that grows, it's easier to access.
Right.
And I think that breath is actually a very powerful tool. I'm sure you find that in your work, that if you focus on your breath, right away, this is what meditation is. If you, I've been doing occasional Levity pauses with the folks at Google, and I'm asking them to do that. Right? Let's open up these pathways. Let's fortify these pathways, and we're looking for. I'm looking for different techniques that are going to work for them. And for example, even the simple idea of doing a walking meditation. So with the Google folks, I started talking about applied mindfulness. So applying it as in any activity that requires your focus. It's not just breathing, right? Like Kinhin, walking meditation, and Zen, you focus on your feet and on the sensations of your feet connecting with the floor and your breath, but really your feet. But you can also do that with your whole body, not just with your feet. If I just focus on moving and being part of the space with a gesture with my arm, and that's coming out of the Buto dance world, where you're part of the whole, and you're really trying just to feel that your whole body is connected to the whole space. So any type of activity, I think, I don't know, it's a new field. It's not like I'm an expert, you
are an expert.
You are the
yes,
expert,
I am an expert. But the point is that finding those pathways that will work for the individual, that will allow them to shift out of their thinking mind. Right? What is that for a person? It may be a meditation. It may be a walking meditation. It may be, and how minimal can that practice be? I think it could be a 1 or a 3 breath practice, actually, because it's all about asking yourself to bring your awareness of where you're at on a sensation level. So like even just stepping outside of your thinking mind for a second, for a breath, is going to try to create some type of balance. So if your thinking mind is way up here and it's all here and nothing's or very little is going on in your intuitive mind, can you shift that balance just a little or even a lot? And if you shift it a lot, when you let go of that, like if I do a levity pause with people, they're going to shift their balance, right? After that levity pause, are they going right back to that, or is there maybe a little more balance? I don't know. I think it depends on the individual as well. Their intention, their wishes, how much energy of themselves are willing to place in that.
Could you I just so I just love this concept of the levity pause. And I haven't been to one, but I'm desperate to do one now. So I'm going to come to the next one that you do because they sound amazing. And we can, let people know how to get into your group, presumably, Moshe, and people could come and do them with you.
Yeah, for sure. It's an open forum. I'm only doing, I've been doing this weekly now since the pandemic began, actually. And it's been ongoing for whatever that is since last April. I'm taking a break because I'm going to go and I'm going to go teach in Europe end of September, beginning of October. So I'm there every Tuesday at 10:30 in the morning, Pacific Coast time. And it's on my website, which is moshecohen.net. You can follow the links in the calendar. And it's just like you just sign up on Zoom. You register with Zoom and then you get a link. And then I'll start it back up in the middle of October. I think at the same time, same day of the week. Please feel free to come and join. We've had varying numbers. It's gone from as high as 20 down to 2, back up to 6. Right now, it's the same group of people who've been coming for the last, I don't know how many months, and they're just like regulars. They just come every week. And there's one person is into Zen, another person is a Clown. It's quite a mix. And for me, the goal is, okay, well, Clown is great for the stage, but I don't want to teach. And I got caught in this circuit of teaching Clown to people who want to be clowns, which is wonderful. But there's always so much work as Clown. And also, is your funny not that good, but are you that available on stage to actually bring an audience to laughter? It's not just a wish, and it's not just a skill. It's some mix of those things.
So I'm wondering if you could give us like a little flavor of the levity pause.
Sure.
Here.
Well, I mean, what I think is important. So if you're wishing for people to get into their sensations and shift their focus, so what I'm doing is I'm taking people into their body and into their voice to open it up. So I'm going to do like some type of very simple centering activity of just basically I work a lot with rubbing hands, which is a Qigong exercise. And just listening to the energy there. And just by doing that and then listening to your breath at the same time, and then I ask people to invite in their sense of humor into how they rub their hands.
Oh, what a great idea.
So that's, because it's all through activity, right? You have to apply your sense of humor to something you're doing. It's not just going to wake up by itself. And so I work with that. And as we get into I do an exercise out of Shintaido, which is a karate form, which is called Tenshin Goso, which is a cycle of life, and it's 5 movements with 5 sounds. It's a cycle, and it's like we do that just again for centering and for opening up voice. What I found in the pandemic is that often people are not opening up their voice, and how wonderful just to give yourself permission to go, whoa, even if it sounds terrible, it's in your own space. Nobody's going to hear. I mean, it's never going to sound terrible, but some people are not satisfied with how their voice sounds, or they're worried about being off key or whatever. And then I take some type of quote unquote clown exercise. Any type of whatever, and I have this vocabulary of different exercises. For example, okay, take an object, you're going to go place it someplace in the room. Okay, and you've already awoken your sense of humor, right? So now, will you please go do that with your sense of humor alive and see what happens? There's no rules. And invite your voice, invite your gestures. And I kind of start there and I see what people do. I don't see what people do because it doesn't really matter. They're all doing whatever they want. And then I'll bring in, I'll close the Levity pause with what I call a Buto walk, which is similar to Kinhin or walking meditation. So it's basically coming back to center and just being very, very moving, walking extremely slowly, very much in part of the space. And then I ask them to invite lightness into that walk. Again, this is all, and Barnaby, you mentioned the connection between clown and Zen, and that's a whole ball of wax. But one thing that Bernie and the Zen peacemakers have worked, or they work with, is 3 tenets, which is not knowing, bearing witness, and taking action. And that taking action, sometimes at the beginning, Bernie had different expressions. It was like loving action, actions out of unity. Alan Senake uses the term appropriate actions. And the idea being that, okay, so I'm in not knowing, which means that if you tell yourself not knowing, you're basically giving permission for your thinking mind to take a break. You say, there's no knowing here. I have no idea. So I'm going to be listening to everything, that's going on around me, to all the sensations that are coming up, because I'm not using my brain to think and to know something. And I think this is what clowns do on stage or off stage as well, is letting go of that, or at least if that's when you get in the zone, is when you let go of the knowing and you witness what's coming up for me. Oh, this is coming up, okay. And then the taking action in this situation is inviting your sense of humor or lightness to be part of that. I like to use the word inject humor, but you could also say awaken humor in your eyes, because the funny thing is that you can awaken humor in your eyes. There's a few things I've discovered over the course of the years. One is that the eyes are the window of the soul, this expression. It exists in a huge number of different languages. It's a common expression, and I can't say all languages, but just in many languages, that's a real expression. Just like sense of humor is also an expression in many languages.
Can I jump in?
Yes.
Something's interesting. Somebody's asking for a link, first of all, Barnaby, the other link, I think, to that page on Moshe's site. What I love about this as well is coming from Feldenkrais background, knowing that, we think of ourselves as acting and doing with our bodies, doing ourselves. What most people don't know is that whatever you're acting and doing is also informing you. So if you take a position with your face, your brain is reading that and it's changing the chemistry in terms of your physiology. It's changing your experience of that moment. So we think of ourselves as being doers, but our bodies are obviously, we not only receive the environment, we receive our internal environment, right? That informs us. So if you can, like I often tell people in my work, think of something that is really upsetting or frustrating or angering, something that's present. and, you know, bring your hands into fists and think about that experience, really bring it close into your mind. And then we let that go and go into a space where now we soften your hands, have your palms turned upward, and go back to that experience. And people always find that it's different because the positioning of their muscles in their body and where their body is different. So when you talk about that, I love this idea of
awakening. Could you do that the other way also? Sorry to interrupt. Couldn't you do that by saying, okay, you hear that sensation, can you soften that sensation and then see how your hands feel? Yeah,
totally. Then this idea of awakening humor in your eyes, I could see it happening in your eyes in that moment that you said it. And I was like, you know, because of our mirror neurons, the way we
exactly.
It happened in my eyes, and I was like, I like that. It's kind of like a tingly sort of, I don't know, it's brightness, it's fun, it's nice. I like that sensation. And it immediately made me realize that link, like, oh, it's not just that I'm not projecting, I'm receiving what's happening in my own face. This is informing my brain or my nervous system, like, hey, look at life differently. Like, look at life with these glasses on. Look at this situation, you know, of having a headache, you know, in a completely different way, simply by this idea of awakening or inviting. I like that. I use that a lot. Inviting another sensation into your attention.
Yeah. Well, that's where the lightfulness actually comes from. I mean, one of the things I was reading, I read Daniel Goleman's, or at least I read part of it, his social intelligence book.
Right.
So he's famous for emotional intelligence, and he's written a lot of other books, and one is called Social Intelligence, and it's examining the neuroscience of interaction. Rather than the neuroscience of just you, it's this neuroscience of interaction. And the neuroscience, those mirror neurons, right, and that subconscious pathway inside of you, what I read, at least as I remember, is that travels 5 times as fast as your conscious thinking.
Wow.
Inside of you. So in other words, if you walk in the room, people are, through their eyes, are examining you subconsciously.
Right.
For threat, you know, fear, flight, freeze. The reptilian brain is examining you and determining if you're a threat or not. And informing you before your thinking mind has a chance to do anything. So you're already reacting in relation to that.
Moshe, who was the name of that author?
Daniel Goleman.
Daniel Goldman?
No, without Gole, Goleman.
Okay.
And he's famous for emotional intelligence. This is a book that he wrote, I believe. And so if you know, the example I like to give is like, and this is kind of a business related. If you're frustrated and you're going into a meeting with people, and you come into the room frustrated, people are sensing that.
Yeah.
Subconsciously, they're sensing that, and they're kind of doing this. They're not doing that. If you can place your awareness before you go in the meeting on how you're feeling, and recognizing that frustration is alive, and trying to say, okay, let me not take myself too seriously, or let me invite lightness into that frustration. It's not like I'm trying to hide it, like it's not there, but I'm not dwelling in it. Then people are going to receive a different sensation when you walk in the room.
Yeah, I think that's a big key. The difference between like not trying to ignore it. It's not about that, but it's not dwelling in it. It's something else.
Well, your awareness, right? Bringing your awareness. It means you're bringing, that also means, I mean, I guess you could say that's raising the level of your intuitive mind compared to your thinking mind. It's like maybe you're becoming more in balance. And I think that's a big part of it, is like we live so much in our rational minds, and, or at least a lot of us do.
And as we were mentioning earlier, that there can be, I think, for me anyway, and the way I experience it, is that there can be often a great heaviness associated with those mind, the thoughts, you know, the kind of circular, repetitive kind of thoughts that we have, right? That kind of get stuck, those stuck thoughts that we have, those beliefs that we have, the anxieties, the worries. And it's hard to replace those, you know, because a lot of coaching methodologies and some kind of cognitive behavioral therapy tries to get at that in a very kind of, in a very rational, logical way, right? Like rationalize that those thoughts aren't true, and you can, you know, replace those with other more positive thoughts, you know, or by affirmations, putting them on the wall and feeling, you know, that'll make me feel better.
Well,
and it's
that
like,
may, I don't know. I like the word practice. I think that that you need a practice that takes you out of your thinking mind, and you need to practice that.
Yeah.
You know, because that's the only way, really. You know, like whether you're meditating every morning, or you're running every day, or you're, you know, whatever it is that you're doing that's allowing your thinking mind to rest is going to be helpful. If it's a practice that's not necessarily, I don't want to use the word spiritually inclined in terms of religious belief, but spiritually inclined in terms of your spirit, of bringing your intuition and valuing that, and being aware and wishing for that to hold that energy. That's a practice that's going to change that pattern.
Yeah, and you mentioned, I think, when we were talking the other day about, you know, there's many different creative approaches to that. Like,
yeah, I think so. I think that any art form really is going to allow you to do that. Part of it is your awareness and your intention. I mean, if you just practice without the intent of shifting your energies, you probably won't get quite as far as if you really see the values that you're trying to instill in yourself, and how you're trying to shift your state of being, which is a great expression also. It comes from my Zen master friend Egyoku, Wendy Egyoku Nakao. That, you know, I asked her, I said, well, you know, what am I doing here in Clown? You know, when I change, you know, from this to that, or that to that, you know, it's not really just an emotion. It's something more than that. And she suggested to think in terms of your state of being. And I think that one, being, you know, you're being, you're not doing, you're being. But there's an emotional underpinning to that being that you can invite in.
And the fact that you mentioned practice also suggests to me that doing is so crucial, because practice is a kind of doing.
Yeah, well, or not doing. Like if you meditate sitting, is that a doing?
It's a doing of not doing.
Yeah, I'm very much doing when I'm not doing meditation.
Yeah.
I mean, it's, you know, meditating is interesting because, you know, I've been meditating for about 2 years now, doing the TM, Transcendental Meditation, 20 minutes twice a day routine. And they're very non-prescriptive about what happens during that meditation. It doesn't matter, you know. And I have all kinds of thoughts, you know, interesting thoughts that go on, and then I come back to the mantra, and then that goes off. But what you start to get is this ability to observe those thoughts happening and think about, oh, that's interesting. Where do they come from? Like, what is the source of those thoughts? You know.
But you're also giving yourself practice and the ability to let go of not being attached to the thinking, right?
That's huge.
Yeah, that's huge. Yeah.
That's huge in clowning as a performer. Right?
Is.
Not attaching to, oh, this is going well. That's a big one.
Yeah, that's a
big
my
gosh. And then,
Yeah.
Not
or it's not
attachment
going
is
well.
bad. I mean, that's easier to time.
You know, it's kind of like you create this huge plan of action for going on stage. You're going to do this, 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 this. But if you start thinking about what you're doing when you're on stage, well, that you've totally all of a sudden gone inwards. And that connection to the audience gets lost in that moment that you start thinking. And you may be able to reestablish that connection very quickly, instantaneously, or you might get lost and lose that connection on a stronger base, which is like.
Yeah, and it often goes back and forth, doesn't it? Right? So that's the same thing, like, oh, I'm in thinking brain now. Oh, crap. You know, this is going downhill. It's not funny anymore. Or like, or I'm in pain now. Oh, crap. How can I stop? And it's interesting because that immediately kicks off this set of reactions, which is that attachment feature. Like what happens when this comes into play? And then if you can detach from that, then that opens up a doorway to, I don't know.
I don't know. When I work with clowns, you know, I myself, you know, okay, so what? I've got 40 years of performing experience under my belt, or in my being, and
how many?
40, I think.
That's what I thought. I thought you said 4, and I was like, wait a minute.
Yeah, I'm a young guy, but like I would be on stage, even after many years, and I all of a sudden catch myself, and I feel my mouth, and I feel my eyes had receded, and I knew instantaneously that I'm no longer really that present. So I'm pushing out energy rather than having this game going on. And I developed the capacity to inhale whatever feeling was alive in me. I would inhale that through my eyes. So, and with humor alive, of course, and when I would do that, I go, and I would be back in my clown world. I wouldn't worry about, you know, what am I going to do, or how is this going to resolve, or any of that. I just say, I'm not in clown. I'm not, you know, I've lost that. I'm bringing that back. I'm pulling that back in. I'm going back into that state of being. And that's, I think, pretty functional. I mean, that works pretty well.
And it's the acknowledgement as well, because you mentioned earlier about being frustrated in a meeting, and that the way to detach from that is to first state it to yourself, to acknowledge it. It's not to kind of push it away. Right.
You know, it is. It's not pushing it away. It's just saying, "Oh, I'm out of balance. Let me shift my balance." Because clown is, you know, I brought up that not knowing, bearing witness, and taking action. I really think that's what a clown does. You know, they come in not knowing. Not every clown. I mean, some clowns have perfected their routines and know where the laugh points are and can hit it on a dime, regardless of where their mind is. But I mean, the type of interactive clowning where it's alive in the moment and you're playing, that's a different story. Yeah.
I just want to share what somebody wrote. I can't tell because I'm in StreamYard and it just says Facebook user. But somebody wrote, in my early 20s, I had a near-death experience and felt being present. I have been meditating since then, but clown was a much easier path to get back to that state. If only many more millions of people could understand that.
Well, yeah, I think that, you see, I agree. And at the same time, I think it's take out the word clown and put in joy of life or some other way of looking at that. It's like saying, okay.
It's tricky that.
Words
are tricky.
Clown has so many meanings to people.
Yeah.
And it's really about humor, enjoyment, fun, funny, lightness. It's about this whole sphere that may not be present.
Yeah, and I want to put clown in it. And I want people to just be more comfortable with the word clown because it's a normal word that has lots of meanings and is nuanced. And I think there's something really powerful as well in that, putting yourself in that position as a clown, like literally performing and going into that space. It is very powerful, and I like that word.
I'm just kind of catching up on some of the comments, and there was a question earlier, which also might lead to some other little area of conversation, which is from let's see, I think it's from Ralph. Anyway, the question is, have you used Lightfulness with people in drug and alcohol recovery? Moshe.
I never considered that. So I think that, I mean, why are they taking drugs or alcohol? What is that doing? Why are they're recovering from that? Means they're looking for other pathways to reach a happy place. I don't know if it's a happy place, but or a place where you feel more comfortable, where you kind of can create some distance between what's ugly out there and what you wish the world to be. I don't know what that is, but I would have to say that it's a different pathway, and it's not going to resonate with everybody, right? The people who are in that drug and alcohol recovery, I imagine that it's important to find pathways that are going to be nourishing to them, to make them feel good about being alive.
Yeah.
And I think generally that's love, joy. How are you getting that nourishment to feel good about life? And Lightfulness may well help to open up that space for some people. I don't know, I can't claim it's a prescription for everything, but
I could also speak to that as well.
Yeah, please. Yeah.
I think with drug and alcohol addiction, I think one of the things that's coming up in this conversation that is important, which Moshe also mentioned when he was talking about his work at Google, this idea of applied mindfulness. I think that's a very, those are terms in which people at Google can understand, and that's a framework that I can understand. So sometimes when you just put the work that you're doing in the right context for people, that they can understand its purpose for them. So for example, with people that are recovering from addiction, I think using language to place the activity, and one of the things we've talked about is how this relates to the nervous system. And even when you're in this space of the space we've talked about in the thinking brain, when things are ruminating, that in and of itself, the word addiction is it can be kind of a tricky one, but that is kind of like an addiction. You can kind of get addicted in this sense of being on a neural pathway or in a neural pattern that you want to stay in. You kind of want it, and it feels comfortable and safe, even if like a part of you doesn't want it. Another part of you kind of is attached to it, I gotta figure this out. I've got, in that headspace. And it can be really difficult to release that attachment. Like I can feel in myself, if whoever asked that question, or I don't know how you might have loads of experience with drug and addiction.
It was actually Chad. Sorry, I got that wrong earlier.
Oh, right. Okay.
Chad who asked that question. And a couple of people have also commented, including somebody mentioned that Jeff Gordon, who's a member of the Facebook group we're in, uses clown therapy to help addiction recovery in prisoners.
Yeah.
So just if anybody's interested in that.
Oh, cool. So talking about it in terms of shifting the addiction to the habit in your nervous system. This idea of practicing is rewiring the nervous system. You're opening and inviting another habit to be formed, another pattern to be formed, more readily available to you in your nervous system. I think sometimes it's just about explaining to people what is going on internally that they can't feel, that they can't see, because people are just in the experience. But I think, talking in those terms to place it or contextualize it can be really, really helpful. And then the other piece I wanted to mention was that sometimes it's not just about feeling good, it's about feeling comfortable with feeling bad. And that is something that you mentioned. You guys, both Barnaby and Moshe, talked about that, which is it's not about pushing away and ignoring the feeling, but how can you be present with the feeling in a different way? And that's so powerful, being present with uncomfortable feelings, or being present with feelings that are unpleasant to feel when you don't have access to lightness. How can I be in sadness and have a shade of lightness in there? How can I be in anxiety and see where's there a window for lightness inside or in relation or next to?
I think I know that when I do practices around frustration in the Levity pause or in a workshop, that people have a great time, right? They're just really having a lot of fun. Oh, you're giving me permission to be angry. Right. Oh, I can be angry with fun. And they just play with that, right? And they just have fun playing with that. And it's releasing some of that energy, but it's also acknowledging the presence of it and creating a different relationship to it.
Wow, that sounds so powerful. The idea of taking an emotion that most people hate to have, or especially, with a lot of drug addiction, it's like, I'm using drugs to feel better. So what if we take the feelings that you're trying to run away from and put them in the context of clown or levity or lightfulness, and be in that emotion?
Yeah, I mean, I was just thinking about, you mentioned sadness, and I was thinking of, but my experience is sad. I'm not thinking at all.
Stop it, Moshe, stop.
But once I was teaching a workshop, and one of the participants, who was a clinic clown, a hospital clown, asked me, what do I do when I meet sad people in the hallway? And I said, nothing. And it's not that there's nothing to do there. It's just that sadness is such a delicate place. And it's a place where it's really good for us to be, even though it's not comfortable, right? It's important to acknowledge that. And, in the grieving process, for example, you don't try to cheer somebody up whose mom died last week. It's not going to work. It's just going to backfire 9 times out of 10, unless they want to cheer up.
Yeah.
And that's what I told that participant. I said, look, if they make eye contact with you and look to invite you into their space, by all means. However, if it's clear that they're not inviting you into your space, you just have to keep going and let it go, and you can't solve that problem.
Not attached to solving other people's problems.
Well, sadness is I think more delicate than like frustration or fear, because I think they're in a vulnerable place. They're so close to this love that's been hurt, or they're not comfortable with where they're at with that right now, and they're trying to resolve that inside, and you're coming from the exterior. So I think the other side of that is that when I talk with people about, or I'm working with people, and we talk about the funny, like you want to, you're going to come in the room. It's, let's say, a business meeting, for example, and you've got this idea that you're going to tell a joke so that people laugh, and then you create a connection with them. But it's really the other way around, that you have to create the connection first before you can share the humor. And I think that's a major point, is that you're sharing something. It's not like you're giving something. You're sharing something. It's happening in connection.
But well, we're coming sort of towards a close here, I think, because of time. But I really wanted to ask you this other question, Moshe, if that's okay. If we can take another 5 minutes or so, for the duck to entertain us.
The duck is saying, okay, 5 minutes.
All right, cool. Thank you, duck. So I'm curious about, so we find ourselves in this place of not knowing, right, about the world and the future. And we've been in it for about 1.5 years now, and we're still sort of in it. And I feel like this has changed our roles in some way, or the importance of our role as clowns, or as healers, or as Levity masters, or whatever, all this work, this whole area of work that we're talking about. And I wondered if you could tell us a little bit about how your experience has been in this last 1.5 years, in terms of dealing with your own experience of the pandemic and being in it, and how your work has helped you through that, and maybe also how you felt others have had particular needs or have benefited from the work in relation to their experience of the pandemic.
Well, I can't tell you how other people have benefited. You'd have to ask them. I mean, other than the fact that I receive a lot of very positive messages from people.
What about yourself? I'm curious. How have you been in this last 1.5 years?
Oh, it's a roller coaster ride. There are times when I feel great, and there are times where I feel terrible. One thing that's happened for me, and I think for a lot of performers, is that you're looking at your profession going, wow, is this ever going to come back? Am I ever actually going to be on stage in a theater with an audience again? And you assume yes, but at the same time, that's kind of been wiped out, at least in the temporary phase. So that's very challenging. I've been very grateful for Zoom, actually, and for the online work that I've been doing. It's not the same. It's not as rich as a live in-person experience by a long shot. And at the same time, you're able to create connection. You're able to share levity. I'm able to teach. I can't teach clown in terms of interaction, but I can teach clown in terms of your internal clown and how you work with that and offer that. So that's been, I'm thankful for all of that. Yeah. That's my mechanic calling to tell me. So here's a good clown thing. Yesterday,
You're going to tell us a funny story, Moshe.
I was thinking about it. I don't know if it's funny because it's going to cost me a lot of money. I'm really bummed about that, so it's not so funny. But I went to move my car, and I just came home on my bike, and I had my keys in my hand, and I stuck my key into the car ignition, but it was the bike lock key. And it got stuck.
Oh.
And I couldn't pull it out.
Nice. Good one.
So yeah, it's really talk about a clown move, and having to work with your own clown energies or your own energies. Anyway, so
wrong key.
So the locksmith couldn't get the key out. They had to tow the car to the mechanic. I had to sit on my car at midnight and wait for the meter maid to come by because it was street cleaning day and I was on the wrong side of the street.
Oh no!
And it was that's like in San Francisco, that's an $80 fine, or something. And I was like, oh gosh. And then one of my neighbors said, well, they come by between 12:15 and 12:30. So I said, okay, I'll go and wait, because that's $80. And the meter maid, when she came by, she was like, she kind of looked at me like, and heard my story, said, okay, that's okay for this week, but that won't work next week. So I can tell that she's just used to a lot of people. Anyways,
hanging out.
Yeah, I have found that getting back to the pandemic, is like humor is so appreciated.
Oh my goodness.
And I have really found myself not clowning for people, but looking for the opportunities to share some lightness, to share some wink, to see if injecting humor into conversations, like I hit 65, right, and I have to sign up for Medicare and all that, and I'm on the phone to enroll in this Medicare program, and it's like I got 20 minutes. She's got to go through 20 minutes of disclaimers and stuff that I have to listen to and agree to, and I just started peppering it with little, okay, and I kept saying, well, I guess that'll work. I was just looking for a way. I wasn't really looking for ways, but I was just taking the lighter side of answering her questions. And she started laughing and enjoying, and we had a good time with this, really monotonous thing. So, I mean, yeah, I've shifted. I've shifted what I do, how I do things. I think that one thing from Zen, not just from Zen, but Buddhism in general, and not just Buddhism, but most spiritual practices really, that serving others is of great benefit. And
clowning.
Yeah, well, clowning is serving others. Really, I mean, if you're clowning for yourself, if you're going out there to satisfy your own ego, you probably won't have as much fun as if you're looking for other people to have fun, and you probably won't be as funny. But really, that a lot of people say that true happiness comes from serving others. And so I keep that in mind.
Yeah, and I guess on that note, in a way, there was something we were talking about yesterday, Molly, about, and I don't know if it came from the Lisa Barrett Browning, is that her name?
No, I can't. Lisa Feldman Barrett.
Lisa Feldman. Barrett Browning is somebody else. Lisa Feldman Barrett, who's has written a really great book, if people haven't read it, or a couple of books about neuroscience and the brain. Lisa Feldman Barrett. And she talks about how our brains grow in relation to other brains and the dependence on other brains. And I think it was from that, Molly, that we were talking about how connecting with others can actually help you connect with yourself.
Yeah, totally.
So maybe in that sense, serving others
Literally.
through clowning or whatever it is really serving yourself as well.
Yeah.
Well, we're all interconnected, right? I mean, that's an aspect of Buddhism that I truly believe, that we're all really interconnected. So yes, for me that makes total sense. Yeah.
I love that. I think that's a great note to end on.
Perfect. Well, there's so much more we could talk about, Moshe, but this has really been so much fun just talking about this stuff.
Thank you, everybody, for coming on.
Amazing work. Would you like to just mention anything else you've got coming up, Moshe, that you would like people to know about?
Well, I'll be teaching some clown workshops online this winter, Inner Clown and Buto Clown. The dates are just getting set. They're on my website. Really, what I'd like to do is one thing about clown is that we're contrarians, especially in indigenous clowning traditions. And if you didn't know, clowning goes back to the beginning of time. They're contrarians. They do things backwards. And so, I often end my Levity pause and workshops with everybody bowing backwards together. Because usually in Zen, you bow like this. Mm-hmm. So you do the opposite. And you bow backwards. And I thought that maybe with a little complicity, we could bow backwards together. So you place complicity in your eyes. And on the count of 3, a 1, a 2, a 3. Thank you so much. It's been wonderful.
I hope you all joined in that at home as well, wherever you are. And yeah, catch one of Moshe's classes soon because they are amazing. Molly, do you want to say a quick word about Movers Academy?
Come in. It's awesome. Maybe Moshe will even be there one of these days. If you've got pain in your body and doctors are telling you this and other people are telling you that, and you want to just do that and get connected and process that, get it out, then come into Movers Academy. How can they find it, Barnaby? I don't even know.
I'll put a link in the comments under this video to check it out. It's a monthly membership, so you can kind of come in and check it out for a month and then leave or stay or So and also I'll just mention I've got a clown workshop coming up very soon. It starts, the first session is a week on Friday, 10th of September. And the course is called Clown Connection. And it's an 8-week course, which is basically kind of a whirlwind ride through the whole world of clowning with a lot of theoretical stuff and a lot of practice. So I kind of provide you a lot of information and knowledge and background about clowning, history, different cultures and different approaches. And then we also every week have a practical workshop where we play games and explore clowning through our bodies. So it's called the Clown Connection. I'll put the link again down underneath this video so you can check it out if you're interested. And it starts next week. So some cool offerings from all of us. And, you know, good luck to us. Good luck to you.
Good luck to us. Good luck, everybody. Good luck to Moshe and his call with the mechanic.
Yeah.
It's all like,
yeah, good luck to your mechanic.
What's the opposite of crossing your fingers?
I'll find out if I need a new ignition lock or if he can make this one work or not. Okay. Good to see you both. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks for being with us today.
Crossing fingers for you.